Is your magic meter running low? Well, we've got a cure for you. Welcome to Dizney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Dizney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePauli, and on today's show, I have William Sandell with me, who was the production designer on two of my favorite Disney live-action movies, Newsies and Hocus Pocus. Listen as William tells stories about his work on these flop-to-cult classic films that have a very special place in the hearts of many Disney fans. I hope you enjoy this exclusive Dizney Coast to Coast interview with William Sandell. Bill, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, it's great. Great to see you.
This is going to be great. So, of course, you've worked on some of my favorite Disney live-action films, but at the beginning, I just want to start with, because I feel like this is a role that people don't necessarily know what it is.
No, it's a production designer. It's that name at the beginning of the film, and no one knows what the heck that is. And no one, it's amazing. So I'm the head of the art department. That's what a production designer is. I sort of oversee the look of a picture, under the auspices of the director. So I'm kind of the point man for his vision artistically. I hire prop masters, decorators, set designers, art directors, and we all sort of put together the vision of the film from the writer and the director, and like that.
So is that your original goal to go into that, or where did your interest start? Because you were like, for people that don't know you, you are like an artist through and through.
Well, yeah, I was a kinetic artist doing these big assemblage Rube Goldberg pieces when I was just turned 20. And movie people started to buy them and sort of seduced me into the movies. And so really these big sets that I'm designing were just sort of bigger versions of these smaller little diorama moving kinetic boxes I was making. Except we got George Clooney in these $1 million boxes instead of my sort of gears and dolls' heads in the boxes I was making. So this all happened in my 20s. I started working for Roger Corman. I was doing propping shows, art directing shows, production assistant on shows, stunt man on shows. When you work for Roger, you've got to be a multitasker. But that was my film school. Then I met Marty Scorsese. He was writing Mean Streets, and he got me over to be the assistant art director on his movie. He said, "Quit doing that art, Bill, and come do my movie. It's going to be my big movie." Indeed, it was, I guess. So that was my first movie, Mean Streets.
I mean, that's incredible. So it's just so interesting to me, because this industry is full of people who dream about working in this industry, and then there are so many cases like you where it's like, wasn't your plan.
Well, I was, like Marty came from New York, and I was living at the house where I was living at the time, up with a bunch of filmmakers in Beverly Hills, and he knew that I'd lived in L.A. all my life. When you live in L.A. all your life, you just run into people that are working on film. Mm-hmm. And I think it still works that way. There's a lot more possibilities, with the internet and whatnot. People say, "Hey, you want to work on my show?" I'm like, "Yeah," and then all of a sudden you're a grip, or all of a sudden you're a costumer. And it just sort of works that way if you're around all this stuff. You can't help but bump into somebody that's doing something creative like that.
Is most of that work done in pre-production or production, or is it pretty equal for you?
Well, I'm usually the first one hired on the film. There's usually a director sitting there with a wonderful script in some office at some studio, wondering if he's ever going to make his movie, and so they hire me, and I start interacting with him and read the script and start bringing people on to sort of start drawing the movie, and I bring on location people. We start finding bits and pieces of the movie, and he starts to feel that he starts to see his vision come true. And the studio, of course, is watching this very carefully because, at the end of the day, sometimes in art direction, there isn't a lot of art. You're mostly hopefully designing a film that the studio will buy into, green light, and shoot. So they're watching to see if they can finance the director's dream. So you have to be very aware of that.
So that's interesting. So a lot of times you'll be hired for something and you're still it's not necessarily green light.
No,
yet.
Sometimes I'm on 6 months before they hopefully want to shoot. But I see a lot of films these days that collapse before they get to the starting gate because, and I know, and I'm not going to name names, of course, but I know that their art department let their director and the studio down, really, but let the director down by over budgeting. And it becomes too incredibly expensive, and the studio pulls the plug and says, we can't do this. And I feel sorry for all my friends. Now, they did get to work for 4 or 5 months on the show, but that you'd like to see the completion of your dream. So I feel you let directors down by over dreaming their dream. You have to dream it on through where it works for the studio and the director.
That's really interesting.
Well, it's important.
Yeah. Huh.
It's important, to design to a budget to make sure the director gets a green light. And I see it handled inappropriately a lot of times in town here.
Now, I want to jump to the first project you did for Dizney, which is a film I am obsessed with, and my listeners know Newsies is a huge part of... I'm an official fansy. Like, there's no question about it.
I'm a big fan of Newsies also.
So how did you get involved with this film?
I was getting ready to do Basic Instinct for Paul Verhoeven. And because we'd worked together before on RoboCop and Total Recall, and we'd stayed good friends all these years. And but I also was friends with Mike Fennell, who was the producer on Newsies from Piranha, from the Joe Dante Piranha film. But I'd known Mike from Roger Corman days, and I really loved Mike. Mike asked me if I wanted to do this kind of small film, but very interesting film from an artistic standpoint. It's set in the late 1800s, 1899, all a musical. Shot on all the back lots of the studio. It's a dream for any art department. So he introduced me to Kenny Ortega. We seemed to hit it off. And I got the call from Mike that Kenny had given me the green light. He said, okay, that's great. So I had to tell, I got the phone call. I was sitting there with Verhoeven, and he was horrified. He said, you're going to do that dinky, stupid movie when you're not going to do Basic Instinct? It really hurt our relationship, actually. But I said, when will I ever get to do a musical in this, all in town, all on the back lots, singing a music? I've never, little knowing that musicals would take off like a bombshell about 3-4 years after our Newsy movie. They hit big, and Kenny would go on with High School Musical. All these movies took off. We were a little before our time on Newsies, as I'm sure you'd agree. But so that's how I got. Mike Fennell introduced me to Kenny.
Okay.
And Kenny gave me the green light.
So not on top of the whole, shooting it on the back lot, it's a musical. It's also a period piece, which I would assume.
Like I said, 1899 on the back lot, and we shot a lot. We right before we were starting to shoot, somebody burned down Universal again. So we
you guys shot a little bit there, right?
We were given insurance money, which they plowed into the movie, which I was that's very hip that Disney did that. I have great respect for Disney and Mike for doing that. They didn't take the money and hide it and run. They plowed it into the set. So we rebuilt 2 of the buildings on the back lot to fit our standards.
At Universal.
At Universal.
Interesting.
And then we spent a lot of money on Hennessy Street, the famous backlot Annie Street at Warner Brothers. Mm-hmm. So it gave our art department from this small movie, I think it was 15 million, something like that, gave us more money for the art in the film. And I think it shows up on the screen.
Now, I've heard you say before that when you read a script, you're reading it really from an art director's point of view. Like, you just want something that's going to be fun and interesting to create, as opposed to good or bad script.
It's true. I look for something that I find interesting artistically, to the expense sometimes of what I perceive. In the old days, I used to get 4 or 5 scripts for every movie I took. There was a lot, all in town. There was a lot of movies being made. But I look at the expense sometimes of the better film. I would take the film that had 50, 80 sets to design.
Yeah.
And all my crew and my friends and my set designers, art directors, illustrators, painters, prop people, they all knew I was like that, and they would wait for me.
Yeah. So
I had a pretty great crew. I can honestly say I built and designed, been part of more sets being built in Hollywood than anyone.
1992, 93, 94 were incredible years for you. We're going to get to those years. We're starting with 92.
Back to back.
Unbelievable.
We just went show to show to show to show.
Now, so I am curious then, if that's kind of how you think or how you read a script. Newsies, obviously, everybody knows, I think, that it was a flop. Now, I love the movie, but I'm curious, the first time you read it, how did you feel about just the film Did you think the film would be successful, or?
Quite frankly, I didn't know who was going to see this movie.
Okay.
Because it was the script that we had was even more dense with historical fact. Mm-hmm. And all I knew is I was getting to do a period movie on these famous backlots. But then in meeting Kenny and starting to see the casting and seeing the boys all hired and watching it, I started to change my mind. And I thought it was fabulous. And I, like a lot of people, was a little bit in shock that it didn't do better at the box office.
It was a major bomb.
I think I have read that it was performed worse than any live-action Disney film had to that point, or maybe ever, for all I know.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I'm sure you're aware, and we can talk about that, how it went gangbusters into Broadway, though.
Love the
Broadway musical. Many Tonys later, and accolades.
Have you seen the musical?
I've never seen the musical, no.
You know they shot it, right?
Yeah.
I
did know they shot it, but I haven't seen it.
I have it. So we need to watch it sometime.
Right, yeah.
I'm actually in that video. I'm in the front row center because I'm so obsessed with Newsies that I think I stayed outside for about 12 hours that day to be like one of the first people.
Well, when I was a kid in high school here in Los Angeles, our musicals, that we would do in the theater and whatnot, were all Bye Bye Birdie and all these sort of older classic films. But when my nieces were in high school, it was Newsies.
Yeah.
They did Newsies.
Unofficial Newsies, because Disney hadn't created their version yet.
Yeah, they were doing their own version.
Yeah.
Yes, true.
So, now you mentioned the backlot a lot. It sounds like you prefer working on a backlot.
Always. It's building sets on stage. I don't want to go shoot a restaurant when I can build the restaurant on stage.
Now, but financially, I'm going to assume going to a restaurant makes more sense.
Well, it depends. It depends, because if you go to a restaurant for one day, it's very costly.
Yeah.
To take all those Teamsters and all those trucks and all those donuts and all those prop vehicles and all that to go out somewhere, so you balance it. And at a certain point, it becomes, believe it or not, better to give me $200,000 or $300,000 to build a set for the convenience of shooting. And you have to look at the shooting schedule. When you're doing a 2-day jaunt to take all those actors for 2 days off the lot, when they could just walk next door, you'll have first assistants and producers going to bat with you, with the studio, who sometimes might be horrified, or if they're smart, they say, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Time is money. Mm-hmm. More money than I can spend is the time.
Yeah.
When a day shoot, back in my day, was like $350,000 a day, it's chump change to let me build that set for $200,000 rather than go around the corner and shoot the thing.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. Now, if there's 2 other things near that restaurant we can shoot on location, of course that makes sense to make a block of days for that. Then all these vehicles can go out, because these feature films, they don't move so easily. Mm-hmm. It's a juggernaut. And slowing down that juggernaut is death. So anything to keep this thing moving smoothly. So that's why, who understood this a lot? I did 4 films for Wolfgang Peterson. He happens to like sets. He likes the whole pageant of movie making.
Yeah.
So we were building a lot of sets for him at Warner Brothers, and one big one over at Sony. And he loved that. He could see his movie being built walking. We might have 7 stages filled with unbelievable sets, and he can go look at them and see what's happening.
Yeah. I've always been a huge fan of the backlot. Like, I remember reading Hitchcock, loved the backlot, hated going on location. And as a kid dreaming of, showbiz, the backlot was the magical place. And I don't know what it is, but there's something about that fake house that makes it more magical than going on location. So
well,
it's cool.
Look, even when you go on location, there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
And plus a lot of locations are hard to light. A lot of locations are hard to
get cameras in. Having a wild wall.
Having a wild wall and having a ceiling that pulls out so you can light things, or if there's any sort of effects. Mm-hmm. You can't blow out the side of some poor person's house.
Yeah.
And a lot of these big dramas I've been doing, there are effects heavy pictures. So you literally can't go on location. You have to design a whole 180-foot ship or a 200-foot Air Force One or a 75-foot fishing boat for Perfect Storm or a, whatever.
Sure.
You just can't go to these places and do what you need to do safely.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that Newsies shot on the Universal backlot, the Warner Brothers backlot. Did you guys shoot at Walt Disney Studios?
Yeah, we shot a little. Disney still had a little tiny backlot, kind of left over from Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Oh, okay.
They had some older buildings, and that was fun to shoot there.
Wow.
And then we shot on their stages, of course.
Okay.
And then we shot on some stages, Newsies at Universal also. It was so much fun to start. I was doing it was so much fun to watch how a director like Kenny, who I love, how a musical is put together. I was fascinated by this.
I would assume it's much different from anything you'd ever worked on.
Well, he would ask me to start building. This was before the sets were built, but he said, "Bill, we're going to go into this soundstage. Can you build me shapes that will mimic what eventually you're going to do, so I can teach the kids some moves?" So we'd go out on Saturday, and I would stand there moving shapes around, moving things around, making notes. Kenny would say, "Well, I need the wonderful scene in when the Newsboys are singing."
Oh, King of New York.
I'm the King of New York, which I love that song so much. When the kid's swinging on the fan, that all came out of a Saturday rehearsal where Kenny said, "I need a thing. Can you get me a fan?" Fascinating to watch this. I need a pole there. So I'd be making notes. Then when we get the crew back, we'd start building them to fit these scenes. And to watch these kids learn these steps, I never was around dancers. It was weird. Kenny would say, "Well, we're going to do this, this, this." And these 9 or 10 kids would start doing this dance. They all, I don't know if all kids, sort of like in the old MGM days where actors learned sword fighting, horseback riding, whatever you learned. It's sort of like these kids all knew basic steps. They must have all had a little dance training, or then Kenny sort of taught them these steps because they got it so quick.
I'm pretty sure most of those Newsboys were dancers, and it was like the leads where they found actors and taught them how to dance.
Because I thought,
but most of them were dancers.
How could they pick up this sort of thing? And he'd say, it's the thing. All of a sudden, boom!
And they know what they
do this thing.
They know what he means. That's so funny. What with Newsies was your biggest challenge on the film?
There was this ongoing thing with Disney where Disney didn't want the movie to look too dark.
Okay. Because it's earth tones. It's all browns and such, yeah.
And they wanted it brighter.
Interesting.
And of course, the novel written by the historians, this newsboy was a very rough time in New York. It was very dark.
Yeah.
And legitimately, I could have sprayed the whole back lot dark black with the smoke and the grime of what the city really was. But Disney just didn't want that kind of picture, which was okay. I understand that.
Yeah.
Musicals aren't, they're always
I never thought of that, but it is a pretty drab looking musical. Like there's no colors. I guess you can get into the colors when it comes to what was that character's name? The female vaudevillian.
Oh,
character.
yeah, Anne Margaret.
Yeah, her character.
Sure.
You could get some color in there.
And there was a dash more color on those stages and the backings and whatnot. For instance, the dancers, I cobblestoned, which all the streets were cobblestones and brick.
Fun dancing on that.
But I had to mimic it, because the dancers would trip and fall. So there's a lot of things I had to make. But, that's showbiz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I love Newsies, and, it sounds like you had a good time making it.
Oh, it was the best.
Was it really? Is that probably your fondest memory?
Well, I think Hocus Pocus was probably my fondest memory. Flintstones and Hocus Pocus. But, Newsies, Kenny is really a terrific guy. And like you've heard in any business, let alone the film business, it starts from the top.
Yeah.
And Kenny was fun to be around. He was interesting. He was appreciative. This was his big first feature. He went on to do a lot more. And it was fun to see him, and Peggy Cummings was his dance coordinator, and fun to see him in action, doing all these wonderful dance moves. And he loved the whole thing. It was a good relationship for a production designer, director. I have fond memories of Kenny from that film.
Speaking of Kenny Ortega, you worked in the perfect segue to Hocus Pocus, which I've got to be honest. Now, this was the following year, so I'm just going to assume it was immediately the next film you worked on.
I think I did one in between. I have to.
Oh, really?
I think I have to think about this. Was it really the next year?
Yeah. So 92 is Newsies, 93 is Hocus Pocus, and I got to be honest. Like, I was just surprised that Kenny Ortega was hired, considering the flop that Newsies was, by the same company to make this movie.
Well,
which, by the way, was also not super successful. I mean,
right.
The brilliant
Hocus Pocus
films.
wasn't. I had that script. I don't know if they were even talking to Kenny yet, but of course, I was excited. And I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. I hate all the others you can throw in the trash can, but I love Halloween. So I was very keen to do it. And they kept telling me, well, go tell your buddy Kenny, and if you can get him to do it, then he'll probably hire you. So they had their eye on him. And I don't know, this might have come from Bette, where she wanted, her company, All Girl Productions. I'd worked for them before on Big Business with Bette and Lily Tomlin. And I love them. Bonnie Bruckheimer and Bette and their company. I love that company. And I bet you they knew that there was going to be more choreography in this with Bette, and she loves Kenny and loved Kenny during
Had
the
she
filming.
worked with him before?
I don't know for sure if there's a link.
Yeah.
But I'll bet you there is a link if we look back. So I was going on the sound. I remember distinctly, anytime I saw Kenny, I was always over at Dizney. I don't know. I think I was working on another picture, but I don't remember. But I was hounding Kenny, and he'd say, "Get away. I'm trying to score Newsies." I said, "Kenny, you got to do the Halloween show. You got to do the Halloween movie. Please, you got to do the Halloween movie, please."
Which at the time I think was called Disney's Halloween House, right?
Yeah, it was Halloween House. I've got some of the old incarnations in a box at home, and he said, "Well, I'm trying to do the scoring for my Newsies. Leave me alone." And then eventually he did decide to do it, and he decided to hire me again. So that was great.
Yeah, I mean it's just these days, and thank goodness it worked out the way it did, because Hocus Pocus obviously wouldn't be what it is without Kenny Ortega. I don't know if these days a director would get a second chance after making the biggest flop for the studio of all time.
Well, it's not just it's not just Kenny. Jeffrey Katzenberg bet his money on this too.
Yeah.
He was in our office a lot. He thought musicals were here. It turned out they were both right. The musicals were coming, but they were just a little early.
Yeah.
And so it's not, you can't dump this all on Kenny. I think he did a hell of a musical.
Yeah.
As witnessed by the number of Tonys it's won on Broadway.
Yeah.
But, and they had Alan Menken wrote the lyrics. They had all the top Little Mermaid people writing music for. The songs are terrific. It's an unbelievable score.
Yeah. Some of his best work.
Yeah. And it just was a little early.
It was early.
And I don't know. Somebody must love Kenny Ortega at Dizney at that time.
Now they really do.
Yeah, sure. And, but they were also on our case about Hocus Pocus. They weren't sure, why are we doing this? Why are we building this witch house? Why are we doing, and it's like, well, your script has a witch house in the movie, Jeffrey. Yeah, you said that right to me. Like, why do you have this house there in the forest? Sort of like asking me, like, we had this big model, and he was looking, I go, sort of like, I thought the woods would look better with a big witch house in it. No. Then the script, I don't dream up things. The script said the witches live in a house in the forest, so I'm building so they were always, it was weird. They had a weird feeling, like, why are we doing this movie? I think it started out as a potential TV property, right?
Yeah.
That sort of blossomed with Bette getting involved, blossomed into a feature film. So
that's hilarious. Why are we building a witch?
It's the truth.
Oh man! So unlike Newsies, this one was filmed, partially at the Walt Disney Studios, but also on location in Salem, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And around California.
Yeah.
Obviously, a different experience. I'm curious. Had you been to Salem, Massachusetts at that point?
I'd never.
Like before working on that.
I'd scouted Boston. See, eventually I did Perfect Storm out in Gloucester outside of Boston, but that was after.
That was after.
Yeah. Okay, I think this is the first time I've been in Salem.
Yeah. So I don't know.
I still have dreams about Salem. I loved it.
Yeah.
And the Marblehead area up there.
Yep.
We filmed a week there, but I was back and forth 4 or 5 times, finding locations and waiting for the leaves to turn and sort of setting things up with the local people there. And I got to know Salem really well, made some good friends there. And, I just loved it.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful time in my life. We spent a week there filming.
And was it autumn-ish? Or
it was autumn-ish, although every scene, I think you mentioned this to me, it was fleshed out I was spray painting leaves all over the place.
Yeah, you were hanging fake leaves.
Just to sort of embellish it. But the week we were there was the week of the 300th year anniversary the killing and hanging of these witches. And then the one man, the 1920 people that died, and they were building the Salem Memorial there, was halfway finished. So it was pretty precipitous time to be in Salem at the 300th year anniversary. The whole town, now I think it's much, much bigger, but the whole town, everywhere you went was a Halloween show. Every empty building was a Halloween haunted house.
Yeah. Every
Young Republican club had a Halloween house. Every sailors union had a Halloween house. It was just endless Halloween. We were immersed, this whole crew of ours, in Halloween there.
Yeah, now it's interesting because I grew up very close to Salem, Massachusetts, and I do remember at this time, I remember when Hocus Pocus came out, there was some concern by the Salem Witches that maybe this film was, it was a comedy, perhaps disrespectful. Did you guys feel any of that when you were in Salem?
I don't remember any concerted effort to sort of talk about that with the community people. I happened to be living in the old Hawthorne Hotel, which I loved. I kept staying there right by the Salem Common, and it's right across from Lori Cabot's, the official witch of Salem at the time. And I talked to her about it. She had a crystal shop there, and she didn't seem to mind.
Okay.
And she was all in her black chiffon and all her old witch girls out there smoking cigarettes. And I said, no. They thought it was fun.
Yeah. How infuriated were you when it came out in July?
That was terrible. I'd forgotten about that till I heard you guys talking about that on stage, that it did have a Disney just dumped it. They were the What's-His-Face's movie,
Nightmare Before Christmas
was going to be their Halloween one, so they dumped us into the summer.
That really,
I know David was not happy about that. The producer,
David Kirshner, the producer, he was heartbroken over the whole Hocus. These days, he's still heartbroken over it a bit, but also loves. It's from what he's told me, it's one of his favorite memories.
This must be terrific for David, who's absolutely the nicest, sweetest guy. Just to see his little story for his daughters blossom into this wonderful Halloween event every year.
Yeah, tradition every year for so many people.
I mean, if there's anyone that loves Halloween more than me, it's David. Perhaps you. It's like
it's my favorite day of the year. Yeah. That's
why
we all connect and stay
and
close.
Who knew that there were so many people? Up until I think you and I talked about 5, 6, 7 years ago, I didn't really realize how this people would come up to me and mention this. Every young woman, their mother showed it to them as a kid. They're going to show it to their kids. They love it. All these sites, Halloween sites, or Hocus Pocus sites, I should say. It's fantastic to see it.
And now Disney's finally caught on, so they're showing it more times than ever this year on freeform television.
That's what I understand. I've been seeing in all these internet platforms.
I think 37 times, something like that.
It's great.
Which is wild. So, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. That is for sure.
Well, I remember when it started playing. I think it was on ABC or what?
ABC Family.
Family, yeah. And every year, so I started to watch it again.
Yeah,
it became an annual thing for me.
Yeah,
but apparently was becoming an annual thing for everybody to watch Hocus Pocus come Halloween, which I love. Yeah. Now I knew. I have to say this. I knew it would be an annual thing because every Christmas I watch It's a Wonderful Life.
Sure.
And there are certain seminal movies. When The Wizard of Oz comes on, I knew our Hocus Pocus film would be that film.
That's cool.
For Halloween people. I didn't realize how many Halloween people are.
I mean, it grows and grows every year. It's become such a huge industry.
Didn't David mention it at, where we were?
Midsummer
Scream? That when he wrote this, it was $1 billion industry, and now it's a $10 billion
industry.
I mean, that's quite a jump, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wild how big Halloween's become. Like I said, it's my favorite day of the year, and I love the fact everybody I've met who's worked on Hocus Pocus, I feel like has that same feeling of Halloween is the best holiday.
Yeah.
And I don't know if maybe Hocus Pocus, I mean, I'm sure for you it was even before that, but maybe for some of those other folks, Hocus Pocus made it their favorite holiday or something.
Yeah.
But it's really wild. There were Halloween passionate people working on that film.
Yes, that was one of those sets that was a very happy, terrific set. I remember, I think didn't at one of your things, Jeff, didn't Thora Birch say that, talking about being a 10-year-old and walking onto the stage at Disney?
Yeah.
Because the way we built it, I never really thought about what a little girl would think about this too, the kid. But there was a road, then there were the gates, and then there was a road leading to the house, and all the trees and the forest. This whole thing was on that huge stage at Disney.
Yeah.
So it was all there.
Built from the ground up by you and your team.
Built from the ground up. Every piece of wood hand-hewn, every square nail put in there. You could, anywhere you looked in that house, any camera angle you wanted to go in on, that wood had been distressed, aged, and had 300 years of dust and age on it. So it was fantastic for Hiro Narita, the cameraman. Anywhere he went, it looked real. There was no phony piece of plywood anywhere. It was all old wood, real trees we shipped from back east, real leaves, it was pretty wild.
Yeah.
So I can see that she must have been flabbergasted to walk on those sets.
I wish that Disney had transported that into one of the parks. What a cool photo op that would have been. And actually, what happened with the cabin? Do you have somebody, was it David? I feel like somebody was trying, or no, somebody was going to take it and they didn't have space.
Well, it's funny. I asked David this finally because I ran into Michael Jackson, the singer, may he rest in peace. I was doing Flintstones for Brian Levant at Universal, and we had sets all over the place. I had a huge set, this big Stonehenge dining room set that the B-52s were going to play the next day. Cavern on the Green.
Yeah.
And I hear this screaming. It was about 6. They were filming way across the lot, some more stuff, screaming. And here comes Michael Jackson walking towards me with a terrified Universal publicist. And apparently he'd gone to the stage to see his good friend Elizabeth Taylor.
Yes.
That was her last film, by the way, Flintstones, who was the good friends with Michael at the time. She just left, so they were looking for something for him to do since they were filming, and no one could come, and I'm the only one that's not doing anything. So I'm all by myself on the stage, and here comes Michael, and he introduced me. Oh, I'm good friends with Kenny, because Kenny was his longtime choreographer, Kenny Ortega. And, I'm trying to get the Witch House bill. I'm going to take the Witch House from Hocus Pocus to my ranch, to Never Neverland. I said, really? You're going to get the Witch House? I said, oh, that's fabulous, Michael. So I showed he and his little niece around.
Wow.
Just he, me, and his niece. And all the publicists ran out of the thing. They was terrified. For like an hour and a half, I'm showing Michael Jackson around. So I always thought he'd gotten the house, maybe. But apparently talking to David at Midsummer Scream, he said, no, he wanted the house. I guess he and David are business partners.
Yeah, David was working, from what I understand, on something with him at the time he passed away.
He was trying to get the prince to build a witch house like that.
Wow.
So he didn't get the house. He was after he probably tried to get the house, but he was after the prince. You know what's weird, speaking of Michael, is the famous clip of when they showed all over 1,000 billion times when he had just passed away, that's Kenny Ortega's voice you hear at the last on that clip where Orlandi's playing, his guitarist, and you'll hear that voice say, okay, Michael, let's try one more.
Yeah.
That's Kenny.
Yeah. Yeah,
getting him ready for that last tour.
Yeah, it's crazy. That film that they ended up making, This Is It, was a really fun documentary concert.
You know what? I haven't seen that. I have to see that too.
Movie night. We're watching Newsies the musical, and
Jesus.
This Is It. You're missing some good stuff there, Bill.
Oh, I'd be so interested to see This Is It.
Yeah,
I heard there was something done like that.
Yeah, it's really quite good. Now, I have seen photos, and I'm not sure if this really involves your department, if you were just in the area at the time, or how this came about, but I've seen photos of Bette Midler getting her makeup tests done. And you kind of hanging out in the background and such, and it looked like you were mid-conversation with her.
Yeah.
Was your department involved with that, or are you just kind of there for fun?
We always got along. I liked Bette, and she was always asking me my opinion. And I am the production designer on the film, and she looks at what she's in. She wants to be. She'll tell you if she doesn't like something's going on.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. Well, what a concept, right? The Bette Midler being vocal about things. I got a call in my office saying, hey, "Can you come down? Bette needs you in her makeup trailer." And sir, I ran down, and Mary Vogt ran down too. So what the deal was, it was the studio wanted Bette to look more like Bette.
Okay.
And not like a witch. And she wanted me
for marketing purposes.
For marketing purposes. Sure. They're paying her a lot of money. And so, but Bette took the role because she wanted to be a witch. And she's really embraced that role. I mean, she's dressed up as Winifred at her big charity auction ball back in New York a few years ago. And she's really loves that. She wanted to be a witch. All the girls wanted to be a witch. Sarah Jessica, they all wanted to be witches. So she was trying on different teeth and different hair for Mary and I. And she'd spin around and see if we liked it. And I was saying, no, I don't like it bad. Or, oh, no, don't do your eyebrows like that. So it was just kind of a BS session with us because she wanted backup when somebody to say, no, Bette looks great as a witch. So she, and I'm on her side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Always on her side against Dizney for that. So they reached an agreement where she added some of her teeth, and she did some things, but she toned down some of the crazier stuff. And
she's certainly recognizable.
Yeah,
as Bette Midler.
They reached an agreement that both parties were happy.
That's cool. So for you, what was on this film? What was more fun, being in Salem or getting to build those things from the ground up at Disney Studios? Or are they just two totally different things?
Totally different things. I guess I loved working on the witch house, and it's. Often you get to build a witch house from the 1600s, an old house with a water wheel and all of this stuff. But it was fun decorating Halloween. Funny story, we shot it in the old town of Whittier, their classic old town where they have a lot of turn-of-the-century homes in California. Yeah. Very much looks like older Salem with these older homes. And they have a heritage square and everything. So we were decorating Halloween, but we're decorating it in November when we were shooting in California. And so we're taking down Christmas lights and putting up Halloween decorations for this kind of one big square block area. People were freaking out because people came to that area to look at the older homes built in the late 1890s, early 1910s and stuff. And all of a sudden they drive from Christmas to Halloween. So I enjoyed I enjoy decorating for Halloween. Who doesn't? So the whole film we're decorating. We shot in the West Adams district here in the edge of Los Angeles. We made Halloween there. We made Halloween in Whittier. And so that was fun. And then, of course, shooting on our stage sets. And we built cemeteries on the stage. We built the kind of the underground where Billy's chasing the kids through the underground. And it was great. I mean, I remember the stage as being one of those great, great movie stages or studio experiences because you've got Bette and the girls, Kathy and Sarah, Jessica, rehearsing their dance steps in one corner. You've got the effects guys rigged with, flipping, moving people around. You've got Tony Gardner working with a cat and a thing and is doing his makeup. So it was like a three-ring circus all the time. It was fabulous, really. Yeah,
no, of course, one of the most popular scenes in that film is the whole I put a spell on you sequence. And that was shot on location in Los Angeles. And you were around for that. So I'm curious if there are any specific memories from that. Just because that's such an iconic scene in the film.
Well,
Was it one day or multiple days?
Oh, it had to be more than one day, I would think. But I'm not sure. God, I forget the venue. It's like the Elks Lodge? What is the...
I forget. I think it was an old hotel or something.
Well, it's owned by the Elks or something. It's by MacArthur Park there.
Yes, it's by MacArthur Park, and it's used, primarily just to rent at this point.
Well, I had to decorate a stage, so we made a backing that looked like... Not too good a backing, because I could have rented a backing that was behind... Ethel Merman in some movie, but we painted a very simple backing that the local town high school students would have painted. Got some trees there, so we made a very simple stage set. The decorator Rosemary Brandenburg and myself, and we just decorated this town hall. We knew what the town halls looked like in Marblehead and in Salem. We shot the exterior in Salem, so we knew what the space should look like and the age of things to look like, and it worked out great. It was a lot of fun. it can't have been one. It had to have been a lot of days. There's a lot of shot. There's a lot shot.
And it's a musical
with
number.
The music with the kids walking in, and that was a big scene, fun scene in the film.
Yeah. Now I know you've been retired from the film industry for quite some time now.
5-6 years, 7 years. Yeah.
So, there's rumors flying about a sequel. If you were to get that call, would you have any interest in going back?
No. And David Kirshner had talked a little bit about this to me, and I just wouldn't want to do it because first of all, I don't think it's going to be with the original cast. Who knows?
We'll see.
Who knows? Might be, but I don't know. I'm retired. Somebody else can do this. It takes a lot of work making these movies.
It takes a lot of work, but also for me, I have this trait where when I was younger, I used to want to...
Let me put it this way. If Kenny Ortega called me and said, Bill, I've decided I'm going to do this movie, that might change my mind.
Okay.
Because I love him to death.
Okay.
And I would want to be there to help him as best I could. But I'm sure hoping he doesn't decide to do it, and I'm sure hoping he doesn't call me.
So you don't want him to... Would you...
I think he should do it.
Yeah.
He probably should do it. Yeah, I'm horrified.
You don't want a sequel. And I don't.
Well,
I understand.
I'm just worried that they're going to wreck it. And not Disney, not anybody in particular. It's just sequels.
It's. I was just going to say I have this trait where when I have something, an amazing experience or something, I'm always afraid to try and recreate or relive that because it's just lightning in a bottle moments in your life.
Yeah, I wouldn't want anything to sort of put a
damper on the original. There are two different types of people. I am the type of person that if a sequel is made and it's horrible, it does somehow tarnish the original for me. There are other people, and I wish I was this type of person, where it won't affect the original at all. The original's still the original. It's never going to change. So it's really a mindset thing. But I completely understand where you're coming from as far as the sequel is concerned.
I mean, I think a majority of people out there that love Hocus Pocus probably would love to see a sequel. Don't you think?
I think the people...
You might know better than I.
Well, I know for me, and I would assume a lot of other people would all be excited that Disney is embracing it in that way, but very nervous as to what the results would be.
Nervous, but excited.
Yeah, and, I don't think it would ever live up to the original, to be honest. And, especially if they decided to cheap out and just go to Canada to shoot it and not go to Salem or something like that. I think, to me, Salem is a character in the film. I know you only shot there for a week, but...
You know what's fun about it when you mention Salem again is there's a whole cottage industry of tours in Salem now.
Absolutely.
We helped make this kind of financial situation happen. And I love that they go to these 10 different locations, and I love seeing pictures on the internet or Instagram pictures of people standing in front of the Max Dennison house or standing in front of City Hall or up in the graveyard there in Marblehead. I just think it's so cool and so fun.
Yeah, we're now on 26 years later.
Isn't that fabulous? I just think it's so cool.
It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Now,
I love that.
Anything else about Hocus Pocus you want to mention before I move on to something else?
No.
Okay. Because, I could talk about Hocus Pocus forever.
We love it.
And we have talked about it.
You and I have talked a lot about it. I just love it.
And you have a lot of stuff from it, too. You were saying earlier how you don't necessarily
I did save a lot of the storyboards and the keyframes and the paintings done from Hocus Pocus. And actually, a friend of mine, an actress, goes back to Salem twice a year, and she just was back talking to Dot at the Dennison house. Dot, that little old lady, and her husband owned the house. And they remember me and have fond memories. Oh, Bill was here. Because I just knocked on their door and asked them. I found 3 houses that looked like this in little bays that had little cupolas on top.
Yeah, and this is Marblehead.
This is in Marblehead, right outside of Salem. And, Bill came in and I asked him, because it's always awkward on location. And they like seeing people out in front of the house taking pictures. And
I've certainly done it.
Tell Bill I still have the painting he gave us of our house. They have it hanging on the wall.
The one that we see in the film?
The one that you see in the film.
So you created that for the film?
Yeah, we created that for the film and gave that to them, and they love it. So
that's fantastic.
She is going to bring them some of the the prints that I do for Sugarmint Gallery. She's going to bring them a whole wad of those prints.
That's
They're
awesome.
looking forward to that. I think she's back this October. She goes back. So
I want to see you go back sometime.
I would like to go. I would like to go back. but not when it's wet and windy. I may have missed the boat, although it was good weather. When we were there, we were lucked out. We had great weather in October.
New England is very, it's unpredictable.
Well, that's what we're worried about is when those beautiful fall leaves come.
Oh, yeah.
They can blow off in a minute. That wind blows in off the scene. See, I'm a Southern California kid. So all of a sudden on Hocus Pocus, I'm out filming these gorgeous cranberry bogs, when Max rides his bike through all this vivid red and these leaves, these maples, these trees. I never see things like that out here.
What's really funny is as I mentioned, grew up around there, and I've been in LA for I think 12 years now, a long time, and I certainly go visit home because my whole family's there, but it had been a while since I had been there in autumn, which is, I will say, that's the time of year. As much as I love Southern California Halloween, it's amazing here, but I miss autumn in New England. And I went back a few years back in the autumn, and something happened. I had like a sense memory thing happen that I was like, I forgot about this. And it was the smell of the dead leaves. I've not only the pictures of the foliage and stuff is beautiful, and I remember all that, but I was walking around Salem, and I got this major smell
from when you were
of the leaves. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I forgot about this.
Yeah.
And this is as much a smell of Halloween as candy corn is,
Yeah.
And you must have maybe even had a little bit of that on stage, because I know you guys brought in the dead leaves.
Oh, yeah. I have this thing about smell-o-vision in the sets anyway. Like on the Perfect Storm sets where we're doing the bar, the Crow's Nest that was in Gloucester up the coast from Salem. And that was all on stage. And we built the exteriors in Gloucester. But, I dragged seaweed behind the walls. And we wanted to have a party at the studio the night before we started shooting. So I had everybody, I said, hey, look, drink beer, carve your initials in the bar, spill beer.
Gotcha.
And it gets to smell. Like if I'm doing a diner on stage, I don't want it to smell like the paint.
Oh, wow.
So I tell the effects guys, hook up the stoves and tell the crew, hey, cook your hamburgers in here at lunch, eat in here, start to get that greasy smell. And, directors, they walk in, they're going to see the set now, and everybody's like, oh, I hope he likes it. They walk in, this feels right. It feels great. And I'm thinking, yeah, because we've been cooking greasy hamburgers in here for a week.
That's awesome.
Oh, it's very important.
I've never heard of anybody doing that.
It's you got to. That's the smell. Like you just said.
Yeah.
It can trigger all the things. So I'm always going to the beach myself, and I'm dumping some sand and seaweed behind the wall, or spilling ketchup and mud, beer and letting it go around. You have to make it smell like something.
That's fascinating. I love that.
Yeah. I don't know if other art directors do it, but I do it.
I've never heard of anybody. And every set I've walked on, like you said, if it's a new set, it smells like paint.
Well, yeah, like you just painted it.
Who's
going to buy that?
That's one of the best nuggets of information I get out of
That's true.
That's fantastic.
That's what I do, and it's helped in my sets.
Wow.
Sure.
That's really wonderful.
And you're right, the old house smelled great. It was all full of old oils and lavenders and the leaves, because they're real trees.
And it helps the actors.
Helps the actors tremendously.
Yeah. That's great. Now, I do want to talk about a film. It's not a Disney film, but I cannot go through an interview with you without speaking about this, because number one, I love the movie. Number two, probably your biggest project as far as building something from the ground up. And for those of you listening who want a connection to Disney, we'll do it real simply. Rick Moranis stars in this film from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. John Goodman stars in this film, who is the voice of Sully in Monsters, Inc. And Rosie O'Donnell stars in this film, the voice of Turk from Tarzan. Of course, I'm talking about 1994's The Flintstones. And
boy, that was a busy few years, that early
92, 93, 94. You did Newsies, Hocus Pocus, Flintstones, which, I've looked at your full resume, and for me, part of it is it was just the perfect age for me. Yeah. But also, those are three phenomenal movies.
Flintstones, I really wanted that a lot. Everybody wanted that job.
How did you end up getting it?
Went over and met Brian Levant, the director, and we hit it right off. And I got the nod. So all of a sudden, there I am in this big office at Amblin, and we start designing. And we had a lot of work to do in that picture, and not a lot of time. And because everything in that movie is designed. Mm-hmm. Every coffee cup, every piece of wood, or anything that lives in a real world had to be carved out of rock and made to look Flintstonian, this weird mixture of a cartoon come to life.
Yeah.
Pretty tricky. pretty tricky stuff.
Yeah, so basically everything seen on screen, you and your team created.
Everything you see, every piece of Xerox paper was drawn.
Yeah.
Then an armature made, then foamed, then painted, then hard-coated.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. Every picture, every bottle, every cup, every spoon, every blanket was a tiger skin. There's maybe off the shelf we'd buy a shell from a shell store once in a while, a real shell. Otherwise, and these sets were all over Universal Studios, filling soundstage. They were unbelievably cool. These sets were so cool.
It saddens me so much that they don't exist anymore. I've literally, this is maybe a little bit of a creepy story. I've literally dreamt about being on those sets and you were there showing me around.
Oh, really?
I've literally dreamt this.
Well, I've showed it was an A ticket. I'd turn around and there'd be everybody in Hollywood wanted to see those sets. But, then we went out to Vasquez Rocks outside of Los Angeles, this real famous shooting area. And we built the whole suburban area.
You built Bedrock.
And then I found a defunct quarry, again, outside of Los Angeles. And we built the whole town of Bedrock. All the buildings and the gas stations and everywhere you went, there were these huge Flintstone sets.
I wish somehow, somewhere,
they should have saved them.
That they could have just kept that.
They were great, and they were pretty well made.
Yeah.
You could have set them up for some tour at the studio or done something, but I don't know. The studio just didn't want to get involved with more stuff, I guess.
Listen, storage is costly, and if it's not making the money, it's not making the money. But I know they saved it for a while for the sequel. The sequel bombed. Actually, when we were at that, I went to that 25th anniversary screening that you were at, and interesting story I didn't know, but that movie had done so well, they immediately wanted to make 2 more with the same cast.
I didn't know that.
But John Goodman didn't want to do it. Brian Levant was saying this, and I was like, oh, wow, we could have had 2 more of the original. They ended up making a prequel, which really wasn't the greatest. But did you work on that one?
Yeah, I worked I was finishing Small Soldiers for Amblin and had same art department, segued into starting to do I have a lot of designs that we did for the Flintstones 2, Viva Las Vegas. And
Viva Rock Vegas.
Rock Vegas, you're right. And so we were working one day and Steven came in, Spielberg, and Colin Wilson, this producer, longtime producer, good guy. And they put us on hold. And they said, gee, we're not going to do it. So I said, I was so disappointed. So I finished up Small Soldiers there and for Joe Dante. And then I went off and immediately got on a pretty big picture. I think it was Air Force One for Wolfgang Peterson with Harrison Ford. And then they all of a sudden lit it again. Brian called me and said, hey, we're going to go. Are you available still? This was like 4 months later. And I was on something else. I said, oh, my God, I can't do it. They said, what am I going to do? Who are we going to get? So I suggested Chris Spurrion-Moore, who was my art director on a lot of films, set designer. I knew him from set designer days. He was set designer, real good guy. So he was the production designer on Viva Rock Vegas. And his only credit as production designer, and he did a great job.
Yeah.
He's a really cool guy, and he did a great job on it.
Yeah, that's another set, man. I wish I could go back in time and walk on those sets. I
have all the miniature pictures of it, all the stuff we did.
Do you have any props saved or anything?
No props, just drawings. Yeah. Just drawings from it. But everything is drawn.
I need to see some of that stuff.
I'll look around and see what I got.
Yeah, that's crazy. In any case, I am curious when people, obviously you've had a varied and fascinating career, but when people find out some of your credits, what's the film that you feel like people really gravitate toward, that really freak out? You worked on what?
Well, lately it's been Master and Commander because I was nominated for an Academy Award for that and won the BAFTA, the British Academy Award, for that one. But generally it's Perfect Storm from Sebastian Junger's book. Yeah, that was a big movie. And Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
Sometimes Flintstones, but mainly Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to have Hocus Pocus on my epitaph.
Yeah.
It was fun for me. It was a great time in my life.
Yeah.
I was real happy in those days, and I'm still pretty happy. But it was just delightful people.
You have such a youthful energy. Like you love Halloween, and we've been to Halloween events together.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, you have that childlike quality when you're at those things. You get giddy.
Yeah, I do, and I'm just fascinated by, I don't know. Once you get Halloween in the blood, it's hard to.
Yeah.
You can't slough that off.
The best day of the year.
It is the best day of the year. When fall comes, I love the summer. I'm a desert person. I love hanging out in the desert with all my desert friends. But when that fall wind, and even in Southern California here, you can notice that it ain't like back east, but you notice when there is a change.
Sure.
You can feel it in the air. And I mean, let's face it, Halloween. I mean, when I was a kid, your parents say, okay, go out. Here's a pillowcase for your candy, and just have fun, and we'll see you later. I mean, when does that happen for a kid?
Yeah.
Go run around the neighborhood with all your friends in the dark. I mean, I'm like, this is heaven.
Yeah, it's also free. The thing I also love about it, and I think a lot of people love it for this reason, is Halloween is a no obligation holiday.
Yes,
it's a holiday. There's no obligation.
You said it exactly right. Yeah, no family obligations.
Yeah, it's right. You do what you want. To me, I love the theatricality of it. I have a theater background. But just on top of it, it's like there's no rules as far as you're a bad person if you don't go visit grandma or if you don't, you know what I mean?
There's no structure.
Yeah.
There's no particular structure like, oh, we got to load up in the car and we got to go here and we have this big dinner with crazy Uncle Joe.
And nothing against those moments. There are some great moments.
I go to Christmas with my family. I love my family. But there's a structure that isn't there on Halloween.
Yeah.
It can be whatever you want it to be.
And that's even if that's sitting at home watching Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown with some popcorn.
I never miss It's Great Pumpkin Charlie. I never miss the Charlie Brown Halloween special. That triggers Halloween for me.
Yeah.
It's Hocus Pocus, but it'd be in the early days when I was a teenager, it was Charlie Brown in Halloween and the Great Pumpkin. And I'm sure you could too. We can do line after line out of that movie.
So good.
It's so good.
Great stuff. One other question for you. I'm curious, of all, Disney obviously has a varied history of a lot of live action films. Are there any that you really look at the art direction, or you just look at the film and you're like, gosh, I wish I had been able to work on that one, whether it was before your time in the industry?
A Disney movie.
One, yeah. Any that pop in your mind? 20,000 Leagues or anything that?
20 was a big film when I was a kid. Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
Yeah.
I love that film.
Yeah.
And 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was a big, scary film for me. I guess the thing that sticks out is the Banshee and Darby O'Gill. That scared the heck out of me when I was a kid.
Well, you got to work on some of the best. Newsies,
I got to work.
Newsies and Hocus Pocus.
Well, and I did Big Business for Disney, and that was kind of great.
Is that Touchstone?
Yes, that was Touchstone. I think that was right before Katzenberg came over and Eisner from Paramount. So Disney was in a real transition there. They were just a little small. They almost were going to break up Disney and sell it.
Oh, gosh.
That was right on the cusp.
Which is so crazy to think of because now Disney buys everybody else.
They own everything now, Disney.
And at that point, the early 80s,
it was really spooky time for Disney. So we made that movie. We were the only little feature shooting on the lot.
It's a quiet lot in general because, most of it's animation. So people at desks as opposed to lights and cameras and sets and stuff like that. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been great.
It's fun.
And thank you. As a fan of these films, thank you for making them traditions.
It's great. And I see you all around town. I see you at all these cons and all these places. So it's fun.
It's wonderful.
You're a very enthusiastic person, too, about all this whole stuff.
I really am. And I'm just jealous that I wasn't on those sets. But hopefully I'll look back at certain things I've worked on and feel the same way. So thank you so much.
Oh, no, it's a lot of fun.
I hope you all enjoyed that interview with William, and I would like to thank William once again for taking the time to come on Disney Coast to Coast. Now, folks, don't forget that you currently have the opportunity to win a trip to Walt Disney World that would include your hotel, park tickets, and even your food. Visit DisneyCoastToCoast.com and click on Contest for a chance to win. And if you've been enjoying these exclusive interviews on Disney Coast to Coast, check out our Patreon link over at DisneyCoastToCoast.com and consider becoming a part of the DCTC community. The more support the community gets, the more magic I can bring to the podcast. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePauli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com.